I remember this distinctly. On this day, I did not believe them. I thought they were lying. And because my 10-year-old brain could not process the idea that someone who had never seen me before, someone who had never spoken with me, would want to hurt me for no other reason than the color of my skin. It just made no sense. And so I didn't believe him. Well, a month and a half, maybe 2 months later, that same year, April 4th, 1968, Martin Luther King was assassinated. And I remember that very clearly. Every major city, nearby Boston, my hometown, Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, all burned to the ground in the name of this new word that I had just learned, racism. And so now I realize this thing called racism does exist, but I didn't understand why. Why don't people like each other just because of the color of their skin? So I formed a question in my own head at the age of 10, which was, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? And for the next 52 years, I've been looking for the answer to that question. And I bought books on Black supremacy, white supremacy, the Nazis in Germany, the neo-Nazis over here, the Ku Klux Klan, you name it. And all of my books talked about it, but they didn't give me the reason why. And I knew this was learned behavior. You weren't born hating people. So if it was learned, it can be unlearned. And so because my books did not address it for me, I decided I'm going to go find out for myself. So where would you go to find out about this kind of thing? Well, I went to people who joined organizations that practice hating, like the Ku Klux Klan. I figured, I'll talk to these guys. They can answer the question for me. Why do they hate me? And believe me, they told me. They told me, and I interviewed them, and I wrote a book. And but here's the interesting thing. Even though I'm sitting there talking with these people, and they're telling me to my face, sitting 3 feet in front of me, that I'm inferior, that Black people are prone to crime, we're lazy, we don't want to work, we prefer to scam the government welfare system, that we're born with smaller brains than white people. And I'm listening to all this stuff. But even through that, I can see that this person is a human being. He just has some different ideas than I have. But I'm going to listen because I'm here to learn. But the important thing is this: you have to know who you are when you go into a situation like that. It doesn't matter what the topic is, whether it's race, whether it's some other controversial topic like abortion or global warming or the current presidency or the war in the Middle East, nuclear weapons, whatever. You have a position, they have an opposite position. Know who you are, but also study them. Try to understand where they're coming from and their position. Put yourself in their shoes. Can you at least try to understand where they're coming from? So that's what I would do. And in doing so, I had the confidence that I didn't have to worry about being offended, because this person's telling me I'm a criminal and all they see is my Black skin. They're telling me that I'm lazy, all they see is my Black skin. Telling me I got a small brain, all they see is my Black skin. And I knew, hey, I have a college education. I've been around the world. I speak 2 languages. So who's this guy talking to? But I'm not going to attack him. I'm not going to attack him because he doesn't know me. So I don't have to worry about believing it. Yes, it's offensive, but I'm not offended because it's not true. I've never been in prison. I've never been on welfare. I've never measured my brain size, but I'm sure it's the same size as anybody else's. So why do I have to worry about him? I'm going to listen to him. And in doing so, that threw him off his game. And his wall began to come down, because no matter how far I've been from this country, and I've been all around the world, no matter how different people are that I've met on the other side of the earth, one thing we all have in common is that we all are human beings. And basically, we all want 4 things. We want to be loved, we want to be respected, we want to be heard, and we want the same things for our families as they want for theirs. So if I can understand those 4 basic principles and give that to somebody, then we can communicate, because they realize, hey, you know what? I'm not that much different than you are. So that lowered the wall. And when the wall was lowered and I allowed that person to air their views, regardless of how vile they may have been, then that person was willing to give me the platform and allow me to air my views. And rather than attack that person for being offensive, like saying, no, you're the one who's a criminal. You're the one who's burning crosses in people's yards and bombing people's church. churches and hanging black people from trees and all this kind of stuff. Rather than attack them, I defended myself. I said, well, you know, I've never been to prison. I've never been on welfare. I have a college degree. You know, my SAT scores got me in there. So that caused that person to have to think about that. You know, they're not going to change overnight. You know, it takes a while. But they had to think about, you know, I just had a conversation with a black guy for 3 hours. And, you know, what he said about such and such made sense, but he's black. But it was true, but he's black. So they were having a cognitive dissonance kind of thing going on, where they knew it was true, but they didn't want to accept it because it came from a black person. So that became their dilemma. And so they had to decide, okay, I found out this is indeed true. So do I disregard this guy's skin color and believe the truth and change my direction? Or do I continue living a lie just because this guy's black? So that I put the ball in their park without attacking them. And I think, you know, that's the key. We spend too much time in this country talking about the other person, or talking at the other person, or talking past the other person. Why don't we just put our ego in check and spend some time talking with the other person?